Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here this afternoon and to talk about, I think, a real fascinating subject as it relates to entrepreneurship and how we stimulate and grow more of this entrepreneurship environment here in the Mid-Michigan region. Just to give you a little context here, over the past two economic clubs, University of Michigan President Mary Sue Coleman and Michigan State University President Luanna Simon have offered their perspectives on the importance of public research universities. And the third university of our alliance, Wayne State University, is one of the premier urban research universities in the nation. And to put these three universities into some perspective, consider this. The Carnegie Foundation places our three world-class research universities in the top 4% of the nation, ranking them as very high research activity universities. And so these are tremendous assets that we have in the state. And President Coleman and Simon talked about these assets. In particular, they focused on how they undertake very important research activities. Last year, collectively, to the tune of $2.1 billion of R&D activity, of which 60% of that comes into the state from the federal government. And they talked about projects like the $600 million FRIB here in East Lansing, or $160 million perinatology research branch of the National Institute of Health in Detroit, or the $140 million lightweight material manufacturing innovation center in Southeast Michigan. But these universities are also huge producers of a talent pipeline, fueling companies across Michigan, across the nation, around the globe. Each year, the three universities collectively enroll 138,000 students, graduate 32,000, 9,400 graduates come out of these schools every year in high demand degree areas such as engineering, computer science, and business. All told, last year, our three universities contributed over $16.5 billion to Michigan's economy. And while the majority of the graduates from these three universities go to work for companies, many of them are going to work for themselves and starting companies. And we're all familiar with individuals like U of M grad Larry Page and Google, or Dan Gilbert, a graduate from MSU and Wayne State University, the founder of Quicken Loans. But there's many more. And last year, we set out to answer the question, how significant are the number of graduates who've gone out and started companies? Some perspective, there's 1.2 million living alumni from our three universities, with about half of those living here in the state of Michigan. So we went out and we surveyed 500,000 alumni from around the world, got over 40,000 responses, and here's what we found. Over 19% of those surveyed had founded or co-founded at least one company, and many have started more than one. Half of those have been started right here in the state of Michigan, with the rest spread out over the US and around the globe. And the rate of starting a business is more than twice that of the national average. And these URC entrepreneurs are 1.5 times more likely to remain in operation 5 years after starting a company compared to the national average. So the three universities, contribute to some of that. They've started and are offering now more than 40 programs and resources for students, alumni, faculty, including classes and degrees in entrepreneurship, business incubators, accelerators, mentors, gap funding, just to name a few. So that's a lot of the facts, but today we really want to focus on the people and their stories that collectively make up these facts. And in particular, the people and stories here in our region. So let's get right into the panel discussion. And what we'd like to do is take a few minutes and let each of the panelists kind of tell their story, hear their experience and how they've kind of made this journey to start up companies or to be involved in entrepreneurship. So, Linda, why don't you start off?
Okay. I feel like some of you guys have probably heard this story a lot, but maybe some of you haven't. And it's really neat to hear all of that information and to be here, because even, I think it's been 12 years or so that I started mine, and none of this was available. So I'm just so excited that people now can, you know, especially the MSU people and people like Bernie, and really do some really neat things with entrepreneurship. So I started actually loving baking and all of that when I was a little girl. I got my first Easy Bake at 6 years old. And my twin sister and I realized that when I baked little pies and little cakes, my brothers liked me for the first time. So I really kind of connected the dots with love and baking and gratitude. And then I had, you know, I was so fortunate. My mom and my grandma and my aunts were all wonderful, wonderful cooks and bakers, and I just loved it. So I would study cookbooks. I always talk about my twin sister had loved Nancy Drew's, and I would get cookbooks. And it's still that way, really. So after that, I went to Michigan State and kind of did the traditional teaching gig. I never thought that I was a business kind of person, because again, back then, they didn't kind of offer what they do now. So I did that, and there were no teaching jobs. I was in the middle of the 80s. So I worked with my husband, and his job failed, and all of a sudden I was pregnant with our first daughter, and I had to find a job that had benefits. So from there, I started working in government. And I worked for Governor Engler for, I think, I don't know, it was like 14, it was a long time. And I actually, during that time, I kept honing my baking skills, and we ended up having a little farmette in DeWitt that we still have, with blackberry bushes and apple trees and cherry trees and peach trees. And so everybody would benefit at the governor's office because I kept bringing in pies and more of my yummy stuff. And I always had dreamed about having a pie shop, and always, actually since my honeymoon in Cape Cod, there was a little pie shop, and I said, someday I'm going to have that. So I would find like old display cases, and I would throw them in my barn, and I'd say, someday I'm going to do that. Not sure how I'm going to do it. And kind of probably right after 9/11, kind of had this big awakening that I need to do this, and I had depression issues that I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. I didn't really know what that was, and again, I kind of connected the dots since I was a little kid and realized that I love to make people happy through baked goods, and just like loving them from walking in my door at my house. And so I started the pie shop. I went down to Small Business Technology Center with Tom Donaldson and Bo Garcia. Please, like, say hi. I couldn't have done it without them, wherever they are. So they helped me with my business plan part, and I started honing my recipes down, and then I started writing little stories about my grandma and my aunt. So when you got a pie, it had provenance. It wasn't just a normal little pie. It was my Ruby's butterscotch pie. We were just talking about that at the table. And so I wanted to pay tribute to our foremothers who had worked really hard and had simple lives, but led really successful lives in a different way than most people think, because they made everyone feel special. And that was what I felt like my mission was. So I did that on my back porch, and I had a little bucket, and I had a little pie pantry and a refrigerator, and people would come to my back porch and pick up a pie and put the money in the bucket and write little notes. And then I did the farm markets, and then I did high-end restaurants, and then I took the big plunge. I used to get my hair cut at Bridge Street Hair Salon in DeWitt, and I used to get my hair cut, and I'd look up and I'd say, someday this is going to be my pie shop. And then all of a sudden it was. It's really funny. When I make sandwiches, I still think about that, because that's where the little table was. So from there, I started, entering pie contests because I decided, you know what, I know these are great pies, but I want other people to know they're great pies. And then if I could win, then I could use that as a marketing tool. So I went down, and then I won, and then I won again, and then I won the Food Network, and then 16 times we won first places. And then from there, I decided I needed to write a cookbook about everything. So I got a lot of no's, and I kept pressing and pressing, and finally I found a publisher, and our cookbook just got the Michigan Notable Book Award, which is really exciting. So from there, I knew that I wanted to spread this. I always knew that it was going to be big, but I always kind of knew I needed a partner to help me, because the bigger we got, the more it was kind of crazy. So this summer, God is good and brought me the most wonderful partner ever, Dustin Preston. Yay! Here he is. So he's helping me on the infrastructure and the expansion. So we're going to have several other stores. We're building a commercial kitchen. And then we just got the big news that we're going to be the exclusive Williams-Sonoma pie people. Yay! So they fired everybody else. And we're starting that up in July. I think that's it.
Excellent. Ryan, you had MSU Spartan Innovations now, but you also are a longtime entrepreneur, so tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure, yeah, my story's not nearly as colorful. When I was coming out of undergrad, I was like most undergrads. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought I was destined for the National Hockey League until my college coach told me the only thing keeping me back was my lack of talent. That wasn't going to come through. So I decided that I'd go to graduate school and spend 4 years and figure it out. So I went to graduate school in chemistry, earned my PhD. Toward the end of that time frame, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So my thesis advisor asked if I would like to start a company with him based on my research. I said, yeah, sure, why not? And I learned my first valuable lesson in technology transfer. And that was all those papers that you sign when you go to graduate school. There are little clauses in there saying that the school owns all of your stuff. So I had to negotiate a license with the university to take my research out and start the company. That company went quite well. We split into two. We sold half of it. The other half still exists, and we just celebrated our 22nd anniversary as a company. So we beat the odds, and it's doing fine. And I thought, after about 3 years of running that company, I thought, gee, that was pretty easy. I ought to do it again. Well, I did it again with less than spectacular results. So I decided, I better go to business school and figure out what I don't know. And so I did that. And after business school, I just did a series of ventures, joined a couple of large companies doing commercialization activities. I taught for 6, 7 years at a small school back east, Babson College, which is known for entrepreneurship. I taught at the Ohio State University for a couple of years, and I decided I wanted to get on the investment side of things. So I joined a large hedge fund and managed their portfolio of companies, and 2008 was not a particularly good time to be in the financial industry. So I learned real quick what it's like to have to sell almost 100 companies in a 24-month time span. It wasn't a lot of fun. We actually ended up doing okay, given the fact that we had to liquidate all those assets. And then I started a hedge fund and ran that for about a year and sold it. Bought a company, sold a company. And I decided, I'd been out of the academic circle for quite some time. I decided I really missed the academic setting. I missed working with students. I missed working with technology transfer, things of that nature. And then the opportunity to come to Michigan popped up. And since Sun Country flies direct between here and Minneapolis, where my family still is for now, I decided to join Michigan State and help grow the ecosystem. That's my story.
Great. So Tom, tell us your journey.
Sure. My beginning isn't much different than Brian's. I started my undergrad at MSU in psychology. it turns out you can't do a whole lot with a bachelor's degree in just psychology. So when I was 23, I kind of was lost looking for, working odd jobs here and there. I started my MBA, never finished, but through that I was able to get an internship at Neogen Corporation, which was a blessing. There, I worked in their HR department, and their HR director basically gave me full responsibility of a couple of training projects. They needed safety training and career path modeling, and some hiring training as well. And the HR director was basically, we're at point A, we need to point Z. Any resources you need to get there, just let me know, but you got to do the rest of it. So that was my first foray kind of into new program initiatives and project management. At the end of that internship, they didn't have a full-time job for me, but I knew that they still had work that they wanted to be done. There's still work on the table. So I got up the courage to ask and say, what do you think about contract work? What if I did consulting with you? And they were very eager to do that because Neogen is such a great company here in the area. They help me land contracts with the state of Michigan, Michigan State University, some odds and ends here and there in the small business world in the greater Lansing region. Mostly doing project management consulting and management consulting. So the transition to kind of into the incubator and doing early stage and pre-seed investment came from a road trip with some of my college friends and old high school friends. We took a 2-week trip from Seattle to Las Vegas in a rented RV, and some of these philosophical questions that late night and many drinks in, we decided that we should just stop talking about all of these ideas and all these things we could do and actually do it. So shortly after that, which is almost 4 years ago now, we started Commonwealth Enterprises to do early stage investment, and we weren't rich by any means, so we came in from the other end trying to kind of bootstrap an investment company, which trust me is quite difficult. I probably should do it the other way around. That's probably why they do it that way. But in any case, we've been successful. We worked with companies like Good for Video. We worked with we helped start Neo Center. That's an investment. We've helped with Art Alley, and that was, when you talk about how many, all of your endeavors can't be successful. Art Alley ultimately ended up not being successful, but it was a huge benefit for the community, a huge learning experience for us and everyone involved. And that's basically how I got into it. And part of the reason Neo Center came about was, as we're trying to figure out how to make Lansing a better place and reach its full potential, and how do you do this and fit the beginning of the funnel with the entrepreneur ecosystem. The incubator seemed like a natural fit. This was coming off, I think, just the first year of the Technology Innovation Center in East Lansing, and we said, why can't we do this in Lansing? Why Lansing proper? And so a bunch of us got together and said, let's do it. So we started that journey as well, and we were just starting our 3rd year here at Neo Center, and things are going pretty well. So that's my journey.
Great. So Bernie, you're our youngest panelist. Bernie's still at Michigan State University, and he and his co-founders of Carbon Cash just returned from South by Southwest, where they were one of only 8 companies that pitched in front of this prestigious national event. And they just returned a few days ago. And so Bernie, tell us about your journey in Carbon Cash.
Yeah, of course. It's a little bit crazy sitting up here being a 20-year-old kid. Still a baby. But yeah, so I think the reason why I'm up here is partly a result of the new world that kids are coming into as they're in university. There's more opportunities now to actually create something, as in technology or business. And if you want to chase after it, you need to have the resources to do it, and that's what they have here. But I'll start with my story. I started off here as a finance major, a freshman, and I wanted to be a trader on Wall Street. That was my big dream. And after a year, I realized that I wasn't going to be that because I lost a bunch of my own graduation money. Needless to say, my parents weren't too happy. And I decided also, I kind of had a bit of one of those self-introspective things that most people in college go through. It's like, oh, what do I want to do? It's the big picture. And I was passionate about the environment. And my parents have a company that basically does carbon reduction in the UK. It's a family company. And it's always kind of been influence, and a big influence to me. So I was like, all right, well, I'll do environmental economics, both business and the environment, two things I was really interested in. So I took this one class, Introduction to Sustainability, and we had to think of everything as a system that would basically interact with the entire, the business end of our interactions, it interacts with the environment, and it's all this closed loop, and it all affects each other. And for my final project, we had to come up with a way to interrupt the energy information feedback loop, or so it's called on campus. So basically reduce energy use and waste. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. Kids were coming up with like these crazy composting things and different management systems. And I just realized as I was sitting in my friend's apartment that whenever they would get up to leave and go somewhere, go to the cafeteria, go to class, they would get up and leave and leave the TV on, the fans on, the lights would be on. And I would just be thinking, well, this is substantial over a large period of time and at the scale of a 16,000 student population campus. So I realized, well, there's a breakdown in the system because they don't get an energy bill and they don't pay for it. So there's no disincentive for them to actually use more electricity. So there's no penalty. So I realized, oh, well, what if we took these like rewards that are already being given out by retailers as promotions to kind of bring in new customers, like you see with campus specials, and then give them to the kids as an incentive to conserve, and also show them how much they're using, because they had no idea. So that's what I started off with, and that was February of last year. That's when I started. And it was just an idea, and I started chasing it down and saying, well, how would I go about doing this? What's the best way? And I realized I needed an app, and we need to work with smart meters. How do we get the information from smart meters? What's the legalities behind it? And I recruited one of a kid I went to high school with. We weren't very close, but I talked to him about the idea one time. He was like, that's awesome. I'd love to work with you. So we started working together, and we would meet every Tuesday and Thursday in the library, and we would just kind of basically sit on our laptops and do research, figuring out, oh, well, how do we do this? There's this big daunting problem, and we had no idea how to solve it. And so eventually we ran into the Hatch in Spartan Innovations, and we realized, oh, well, there's all these resources here with people who can help us, connections, interns who can help us develop things. So we went there, and I was like, this is awesome, because they gave us a key to their place above Grand River. I could go there 24 hours a day. There's whiteboards all over the place. Whereas before I was just sitting in the library and on my laptop, like I'm doing a research paper. But there it's, you're launching a business and brainstorming and working with people, and it was just awesome. So I've been working at that for roughly a year now, and over the summer we met with Consumers Energy and a couple other people at the university, and we're trying to get a pilot going for the better part of a year now. And we're finally going to be launching it this coming, well, actually March 31st, but most of April. And I actually didn't even have a developer until about December of 2013. We had money, but I would go around trying to hire a freelance developer, and he never showed up. So that's been an issue. And I'd be like, hey, you're gonna come and meet me and we're gonna start working on this? Oh, yeah, sorry. But, so it's been a learning curve. There's no doubt about that. But I've got a good partner, and we've actually created the app, and we're about to launch it here on campus with 2 halls, Brian and Armstrong, to see if it works. And so that's where we've come so far.
So I've got a few questions that I'm going to pose to the panel, but there's also some microphones up here, or individuals from within the audience would like to ask some questions of any of the panelists. You certainly can do that. We want to make this kind of interactive. Let me start, I guess, with the question maybe posed to Brian and to Tom. you hear a lot of people talk about kind of this entrepreneur ecosystem, right? And Linda touched on the SBTDC. Bernie mentioned the hatch. I mean, talk a little bit about, what is this thing that people call an ecosystem, and what are some of the components here in the region that make up some of that to help entrepreneurs that are starting or thinking of starting companies?
Well, so, I mean, I think when you talk about an entrepreneurial ecosystem, there's a lot of elements there. You're talking about business assistant programs, you're talking about SBTDC, attorney, and then you're talking about the business specialists who are there to help a business thrive, like attorneys and accountants, HR professionals, people who know strategy and planning, people who will help you with organizational leadership. And so when you talk about an entrepreneurial ecosystem, it's actually quite a comprehensive and complex ecosystem. There's so many things that feed it. Obviously, just in this room, as we talk about service providers to entrepreneurs, there's a room full of them right here. We talk about some of the resources that have developed over time. We have now the TIC and the Hatch and NEO Center. We have SBTDC, as I've already mentioned. And there's a lot of resources here available.
Yeah, when you think about an ecosystem, and you look at Massachusetts, California, New York, you toss Texas in there as well. The ecosystems that work very, very well, let's assume there are 100 pieces in an ecosystem. If you have 90 in place and 10 going in place, then you're doing really well. Here, the good news in the state of Michigan is that there's a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of state support, and there are a lot of people pulling in the same direction to assemble this ecosystem. We're still missing some critical pieces that we need to work on. But as Tom said, it is quite a comprehensive undertaking to put together an entrepreneurial ecosystem, because it does touch on a lot of different aspects of things. And many of the factors that you need to put in place are exogenous. They're things that you don't necessarily have a lot of control over. So you have to find a way to gain control over some of those factors. One that comes to mind right away is capital. The state does a great job in supporting entrepreneurship. But the fact of the matter is, there is not a lot of early stage capital in the state of Michigan. How do we impact that? The good news is that the coasts, which control a lot of the capital, of course, some of the smarter funds are starting to realize that the valuations in the Midwest are much better. And what I mean by that is they know there's technology, they know there are people, but the wages are lower here than on the coasts. Therefore, an investment here in the Midwest tends to go further. So we're starting to see some of the more progressive thinking venture capital firms start to look to the Midwest, and we're seeing a few start to look toward Michigan. So I think the pieces are falling into place, but it takes quite some time before you have all cylinders pumping.
Linda or Bernie, from your perspective, I mean, Linda, you mentioned, I think, when we were talking before lunch, that if all of this had been here 12 years ago when you were starting, but some of the things that you've seen, when you started, you mentioned the SBTDC, the Small Business Technology Development Center here in the Lansing region, but what other kinds of things have you seen in the area that have helped you and supported kind of where you've gone? And Bernie, you mentioned the Hatch. Talk a little bit about some of those things.
The Michigan State Product Center, I don't know if there's anybody here from that, but they've been wonderful too. So when we were deciding to do mail order and open up that whole beautiful mess, but it was a huge endeavor, because just freezing a pie with the way we make them, you couldn't do that. So there was a lot of food science involved and a lot of packaging involved, and so we really made use of the product center, and still do, for labeling, and they've been wonderful. That's a huge asset here. I was just talking with an assignment about that the other day, of all the great things that Michigan State has done, and I still need to make use of. So they were wonderful, and again, now I actually had started a business at Michigan State, a little, just called Tisket Tasket, and it's still here. I'm so excited. But I didn't know anything that I was doing back then, and just to really reach out to the students and really like what you're doing as far as allowing their minds to go, yeah, I can do this business, and I'm here to help you, is huge. I'm sure Bernie just have great testimony about that as far as.
Bernie, you mentioned the hatch. I mean, talk a little bit more about kind of what happens in that that space. And
yeah, sure. Well, first of all, as a student, you have usually no idea how you're going to start a venture, or you don't have a network built up in the first place. You don't know where to access capital to help you raise or to help you chase after your idea. So when there's a place like the Hatch that exists where you can get grant money to help you fund most of your startup expenses, you have space where you can go and work and meet with your team, interns that can help you. Those kind of resources go a really, really long way for most startup ventures, for student startup ventures specifically. And then a lot of it also has to do with this ecosystem you're talking about, where a lot of it's interconnected. So the Hatch is obviously part of Spartan Innovations, and Spartan Innovations is linked up with a lot of the major state-funded economic development places, as well as private incubators and VC firms that a student wouldn't be able to go into and make their own just direct introduction. They need to be introduced by someone else. And that also went for me, and particularly with the university, trying to get them to take me seriously. It helped a lot that I was working with Spartan Innovations, because there are contacts that Paul Jakes had at the university that gave me an air of credibility. So it's not just, for like a student startup, it's not just capital raising or even technology assistance, but a lot of it has to do with giving them an air of credibility, especially if you're going to be going to a VC or incubator.
Brian, you hear a lot of people talk about this phrase, mentors in residence. Talk a little bit about kind of that role and how that fits into some of the things happening at MSU.
Sure, that's actually one of our larger challenges at Spartan Innovations, is to find these guys and gals to be mentors in residence. And these are guys and gals who have started 2 or 3 companies or raised some capital, have been there, done that. Hopefully have actually failed once, so they understand where the pitfalls are. But ideally, somebody who's local to the area, because obviously we like them to interact at least 2 days a week with us. Their role is to evaluate different technologies, to take on 2 or 3 projects with the goal of within 12 months launching one of those as a new venture. Now, speaking of the ecosystem, the fact that we have these mentors in residence in-house allows also our students to interact with these mentors in residence, especially when there's an interest overlap. So we have a number of these mentors in residence who not only are working on their projects for the benefit of the university, but they also provide leadership and mentorship for student groups as well.
So let me ask each of the panelists, what would you say is the biggest pitfall that you faced when you had started your businesses?
I didn't have any money.
That's a pitfall?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. But no, I think actually the biggest one was that I didn't have the experience or the knowledge of the network I needed to actually go ahead and make real progress on my idea. I've been working on this for roughly almost a year and 2 months. If I had known a developer who had been interested in the idea, or if I had vetted out the idea enough to a point where I could have convinced a skilled developer or a team of skilled developers to work with me with no money, that would have expedited the process greatly. Not to mention if I had been able to convince someone to let me run a pilot in their building. It's all about being able to sell yourself, and if you don't have A, technology, or B, a good enough understanding of what you want from someone, you're not going to be able to do that. So, yeah, that set me back a few months.
I would almost echo what Bernie's saying too, to some degree. I mean, you kind of start the journey thinking it's going to be really easy. You have this, you think it's a wonderful, amazing, awesome idea. You get how it works. You're going to be able to sell like that and get out there, and just everyone's going to automatically get it, right? Like there's no reason, because you're so passionate about it. And then that leads into the funding issue. What's called this launch hype, and then you kind of start going down, and then you get this idea that you're like, oh, I guess I don't really exactly know how this is going to work out. And Neo Center has been fortunate to have a lot of community support through MSU and Farm Bureau and Andy Pavlik and stuff. So those are some early adopters. But again, I thought it would be way easier to get people on board, but you really have to start understanding exactly what you want from people. Being able to articulate your value proposition is a lot harder than people originally think it is.
Yeah, my first company, even though it just celebrated its 22nd anniversary, it is a minor miracle that it's around. We had no idea what we were doing. It was myself, a freshly minted PhD, and my faculty advisor. And we made just about every single mistake you could possibly make in hindsight. And how we survived, I have no idea. But what I did learn is that I became passionate about the business process and understanding what makes businesses survive. And the fact is, most businesses fail for the wrong reasons. Most people make critical mistakes in the very beginning that haunt them downstream. It's very rare to see a business fail because they don't have customers. Businesses fail because they make critical mistakes typically early on, and we made a ton of them. And I learned a lot from that lesson. It is a miracle that company still exists, but I take those lessons into the ventures that we're launching now.
I think for me it was just being alone, because it's scary to do that and to feel confident enough with really no business background. But that's, again, with the help with the SBTC really helped me there. And then all the customers, they kept coming, and they still come. Thank you, all of you. So I think that was like my major part, always money. And then I think you're going to work hard, and you know that, but you kind of have no clue. It's always been my third baby, and my husband always wanted another one. I'm like, no way, I have three. But truly, it's the hardest. Everyone thinks it's all kind of glamorous, but I was shop vacuuming water out of a building that we rent till who knows when the other day, and you work 7 days a week, but again, when you love what you do, it's all good. So I wouldn't change a bit, but it's adjusting, family adjusting, and having wonderful, supportive customers and community and family that makes it all work, I think.
So, are there questions from out in the audience for any of the panelists? Anybody? Okay, I'll keep plowing along. I've got a couple more here. So, what one piece of advice would you have for someone who's looking to start a business? Let me start back with you, Linda.
Do your homework, of course, and we were talking about making mistakes, but I always try to be really methodical and really think, things through. And because I was by myself, I really looked with people that had business experience, and again, this mentor program is so wonderful to make sure that you're, making the right decisions for the right reasons. I think that those are like really, really important. Making sure that you're working hard and that you have the right mission and the right reason that you're starting a business. I think sometimes people start a business for the wrong reasons, and those don't work.
I would say, especially here in Michigan, seek out the advice. I was not lucky enough to have the kind of economic development groups that you have here in Michigan when I started. So we were really pretty much on our own. And as I said, we had no idea what we were doing. I would love to have nothing more than a LEAP or MEDC or Michigan State or Hatch kind of assets. Seek out the advice. Don't try and do it alone. A lot of people have done it before. They can help you, especially they can help you not make the mistakes that most companies make.
In context of all that stuff, I would say, it's easier to start than you think. Get started as soon as you can. I think there's still some fear. You want to start for the right reasons. You want to take advice of what's out there, but I think there's a lot of people who are afraid to take the jump. When we have these kinds of resources, and you have a community with this kind of resources, it's easier to get started than you think, so don't let fear hold you back.
Yeah, I would say look nice, smell nice, be nice. So really double down, because it ultimately, you have to be able to work with people. It's one thing if you're a coder, or if you're an early coder, but what are you going to do with that code if you can't have someone buy it, or maybe put it on the App Store, but it doesn't work for everyone. So, like, if you're presentable, you understand how to be nice to people, and what I find with a lot of kids, not a lot of kids, but some that I meet that are maybe out of the hatch, or maybe from other schools that I meet at competitions, is that they're so kind of self-absorbed with their idea that they don't want to listen to anyone. They don't want to listen to people's advice. They think they're smarter than you. They come off as condescending. So I would say the first thing is, be nice. Listen to people. They're trying to help you. And if you do that, you're going to end up building up your own network and open up more opportunities. So that's what I'm going to do.
Great advice. Great advice. Question?
Just real quick, any perspectives on the state's entry into kind of venture capital investing through a couple of different funds here in Michigan? And then the second question is, are you looking to take in outside capital at this point?
Yes.
Bernie, I think you might want to talk to that.
Yes is always the answer.
Brian, you want to, or Tom, you want to touch on the state and the venture capital?
Yeah, if you look at the venture capital industry, by most people's accounts, there are 450 venture capital firms in the country. There are about 28 here in Michigan. The amount of capital, the average assets under management for the venture capital firms is rather low. The good news is that they're very smart people. They're very accessible, as opposed to some other areas. The bad news is that the assets under management aren't very high. In terms of the state putting money to work through a couple of funds, I think it's fantastic. I think the state is doing, in my opinion, absolutely everything they can to make this happen. I've been in California, Massachusetts, Washington, Virginia, Maryland. These are companies I've had. Illinois, a whole ton of states, and I have not seen the kind of involvement by state agencies in this process as I've seen here in Michigan. So I think it's fantastic.
Generally speaking, I mostly agree that it's good for the state to be involved in those things. I hope that some of that starts transferring over to the private sector and private venture capitalists. One of my big things we talk about sometimes that when you talk about the entrepreneur ecosystem and communities in general, I think communities need to be led by members of that community in some degree. And when government gets involved with venture capital and the entrepreneur ecosystem, they're great to help facilitate things, but total control of funds, I have mixed feelings about that part. But as far as more capital in the system in Michigan right now is a good thing.
I was actually just down at South by Southwest in Austin. If you're familiar with it, it's a big tech convention, music festival. We were down there for a startup competition, but when you go into the convention center for the interactive thing, there's different countries will have their own booths, like exhibition things. And I noticed that Pure Michigan's was about 3 times as large as most countries. Honestly, like Argentina, Ireland, Canada. We were actually all down there from East Lansing. We had these T-shirts that said, they had different symbols on them for hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, sharks. And one in the middle said beaver. They all said there's none of those in East Lansing. And we took one of the shirts over. Apparently, I didn't see this happen, but someone said they took one of the shirts over to the Canada booth and gave it to them.
So when you're not first, you got to try harder, right?
Right.
So I think the takeaway here, or at least the major takeaway that I came away from this conversation is to coin a phrase, it takes a village to raise an entrepreneur. And I think this ecosystem and the support system that we have here that's growing and expanding in the Lansing region just bodes well for the future, and I think is really positive signs. So with that, let's thank our panelists.
Outstanding program today. Thank you very much.